There's this quote from William Blake. It's kind of intense. What seems to be is to those to whom it seems to be.
And is productive of the most dreadful consequences to those to whom it seems to be.
Yeah, it really makes you stop and think, doesn't it?
It totally does. It feels like a key to something fundamental. And that's really what we want to unpack for you today in this deep dive.
Right. We've got some fascinating material, including bits from a Neville Goddard radio lecture from 1951.
Yeah, exactly. And our goal here is pretty simple. To really get our heads around this law of assumption, understand what Goddard and others were saying, and see how you can actually use it.
Use it to empower yourself, not get overwhelmed by it. Because the core idea, right from the start, is that what you assume, what you truly believe inside, that's basically the blueprint for your reality.
So Blake's quote, that first part, what seems to be, is to those to whom it seems to be. It sounds almost obvious.
Well, yes and no. It highlights the power of individual perception. What you accept as true is true for your experience. Okay, so my belief makes it real for me. But then Blake adds that bit about dreadful consequences. That feels heavier.
It is. It's the flip side. If your core assumptions are negative or limiting, Blake is saying those assumptions don't just stay as thoughts. They actually manifest negative outcomes in your life.
So it's like, be careful what you assume because you might just get it.
Precisely. It points to the responsibility that comes with this creative power of consciousness. Assuming the worst can, maybe unintentionally, set the stage for it.
Right, like a self-fulfilling thing. And this idea isn't new, is it? You mentioned the sources point way back, Romans.
Yeah, the Epistle to the Romans, chapter 14, verse 14, it says, I know and am persuaded by the Lord Jesus that there is nothing unclean of itself, but to him that esteemeth anything to be unclean, to him it is unclean.
Wow. Okay, how does that link up with Blake?
It's a direct parallel, really. Paul is saying the thing itself isn't inherently unclean or bad. It's our judgment, our belief, our assumption about it that makes it so in our experience.
So again, what seems to be becomes what is for us, based on our inner conviction.
Exactly. Our personal belief system acts like a filter or even a creator of what we experience as true or real.
Now, this is where it gets really interesting, I think, for people listening. The source material talks about university experiments.
Right, at 2 major universities, and not just a few tests.
Yeah, that's the wild part. 2,000 experiments they apparently ran.
2,000, that's a staggering number.
And their conclusion was basically, what you see when you look at something depends not so much on what is there as on the assumption you make when you look.
I mean, think about that. 2,000 experiments pointing to the idea that our assumptions literally shape what we perceive. It really challenges the notion of a purely objective reality that we just passively observe.
So we're not just seeing what's out there. We're seeing it through the lens of what we expect to see.
That's what the evidence suggests. Our minds are actively constructing our perception based on our underlying assumptions.
Which leads nicely into this concept of the assumptive world. What exactly does that mean? Is it like we each live in our own little reality bubble?
Kind of, yeah. It emphasizes how subjective our experience is. The example given is great. A husband, his wife sees him one way, his mother sees him completely differently.
Right. Objectively the same person, but the perception is totally different based on the relationship, the history, the assumptions.
Exactly. Your self-element, your feelings, your past, your beliefs about him shapes your view. And crucially, the source says these elements, these assumptions, aren't set in stone. They can be changed.
Okay, so there's power there. We can change our assumptions and therefore potentially change our experience. But what about the solid stuff, the real world out there? The source talks about penetrating its thin crust. Sounds a bit mystical.
It can sound that way, but I think the idea is less about magic and more about the power of focused attention. The solidity we perceive might be partly because our attention is usually so scattered.
Okay. So if we focus intensely,
if we learn to really concentrate, to condense our mental energy onto one point or one idea, the source suggests that the dominance of the external world can fade.
Like when you're totally lost in a book or a movie.
Exactly like that. Your immediate surroundings seem to vanish because your attention is fully absorbed elsewhere. It's not that the world isn't there, it's just that your focus makes it less present in your awareness.
So how do we apply that? How do we give reality to something we want instead?
The key is concentrated attention until the desired state has sensory vividness. You imagine it so clearly with so much feeling that it feels real to your senses right now.
Sensory vividness. So seeing it, hearing it, feeling it in my imagination?
Yes, when that imagined state feels as real and tangible as the physical world around you, the source says it gains the power, the momentum to actually manifest.
Okay, that makes sense. So what are the practical ways to achieve that level of focus? The source mentioned a couple of techniques: meditation, or that state akin to sleep.
Right, often called S-at state akin to sleep. It's that drowsy, relaxed state, maybe just before falling asleep or upon waking, where you're still consciously aware but deeply relaxed.
And the mind is more receptive then.
That's the idea. The conscious mind's resistance is lower, making the subconscious more open to suggestion. So you consciously direct your imagination towards your wish fulfilled in that state.
And the other technique, something about gazing.
Fixed gazing, yeah. You'd look softly into something plain, like a wall or a carpet, not focusing on the surface details, but kind of looking through it, into the depth.
What's the point of that?
It helps to still the mind, reduce external distraction. It creates a sort of mental screen. Then, within that perceived depth, you imagine seeing and hearing your desire as already accomplished, holding your attention there until it completely fills your mind.
Okay, I can picture that. Then the source describes this feeling after doing this kind of controlled imagining of like returning from far away.
Yes, like coming back from a vivid dream. And often there's that initial jolt.
Where you open your eyes and, well, nothing looks different. And you might feel a bit silly, maybe, like you were just pretending.
That's a really common and crucial moment, the feeling of contrast. The source stresses that this is exactly when you need to hold firm.
Hold firm to the inner vision, even if the outer world hasn't caught up yet.
Precisely. Remain faithful to what you experienced in your imagination. Persist in that feeling, that assumption that it is already true. That persistence is what bridges the gap.
So it comes back to that core idea. Assuming the feeling of the wish fulfilled. It's not just visualizing, it's feeling it as real now.
Exactly. That's the engine. You identify with the state desired. You feel yourself being the person who already has it, living from that state, even if your senses are telling you otherwise right now.
And keep doing that until it hardens into fact.
That's the principle. Persistent assumption becomes objective reality.
How do you know if you're really doing it, though? If that shift is happening internally? The source had an interesting take on checking your mental conversations.
Ah, yes. That's a very practical check. Our inner silent conversations, the ones we have in our heads with other people, often reveal our true assumptions more than what we say out loud.
So if I assume I'm, say, successful, my mental chats with my boss or friends should reflect that.
They should naturally start to change. You'd mentally interact with them from the perspective of being successful. If you're still having the same old insecure or complaining inner dialogues, the core assumption probably hasn't fully shifted yet.
That's quite insightful. Your inner world reflects the change first.
A change in your concept of self inevitably changes your relationship to the world, and that change shows up in those spontaneous mental interactions.
The source also talks about the spiritual man speaking to the natural man through desire. What's that about?
It frames desire not just as wanting something you lack, but as a kind of inner guidance. Like your deeper self, the spiritual man, is communicating potential to your everyday self, the natural man, through the feeling of desire.
So desire is like a call to become something more.
Potentially, yes. And obedience to that call means assuming the feeling of the wish already fulfilled. That's how you align with and realize that potential.
And there was that Pascal quote, too. You would not have sought me had you not already found me.
Right. It suggests the very act of desiring something implies its potentiality already exists within you, or you wouldn't even be able to conceive of it. The seeking implies a prior finding on some level.
So assuming the feeling of the wish fulfilled is like answering that call, activating that potential.
That's the idea. You're aligning your conscious feeling state with the potential that desire has revealed.
And by doing that and acting from that assumption, you literally change your future. The source calls it an inalienable right. That's powerful.
It really emphasizes personal agency, but it also cautions, importantly, that it's not just about changing external stuff superficially.
Right. It needs to be a real transformation of self, a fundamental shift in who you assume yourself to be.
Exactly. Lasting change comes from that deeper level.
Can we use this for other people too? Like wishing something good for a friend?
Yes. The principle extends. The source suggests meditating for others by imagining them already embodying the state you desire for them. Healthy, happy, successful, whatever it is.
So I'd imagine my friend being successful, feeling that reality for them.
Precisely. You hold that vision, feel its reality in your imagination. It connects back to how others perceive us, often reflecting the ideals we hold. By holding a high vision for someone, you're sort of reflecting their potential back to them.
That's a beautiful way to think about it. And doing this, imagining the fulfillment, it apparently neutralizes the wanting, the longing.
It does, because if you truly feel it as done, as already real in imagination, the ache of wanting disappears. You shift from striving for something absent.
To gratitude for something received, even if it's only been received in imagination so far.
Exactly. That feeling of thank you, it is done, is a strong sign the assumption is taking hold.
Then there's that really profound statement. Believing and being are one.
Yeah, that cuts right to the chase. What you conceive yourself to be isn't separate from you. It is you on some level.
And the quote, "If thou canst believe, all things are possible to him that believeth," linking belief directly to possibility.
It frames belief, or faith, not as hoping for something distant, but as the very substance of things hoped for, the evidence of things not yet seen physically. Your state of being is your belief manifested.
So if I assume a, let's say, finer self, a more capable, confident version of me, does that change how I see others?
According to the source, absolutely. When you operate from a higher assumption about yourself, you naturally tend to see others through a more benevolent lens too. You see their potential.
So enlightened people, people who grasp this, naturally want good for others.
It suggests a natural outflow. An expanded sense of self often leads to an expanded sense of goodwill and seeing the best in others.
So applying this for others, the best way is that controlled contemplation, imagining their goal fulfilled.
That's presented as the ideal method. Using intense desire as the fuel, you vividly imagine and feel their success or well-being as already real.
It all sounds so powerful. And honestly, a little daunting sometimes. I mean, I know I haven't totally mastered controlling my attention like that all the time. It's a work in progress.
Oh, absolutely. And that's okay. The source acknowledges that perfectly with that quote about pressing forward.
Right. This one thing I do, forgetting those things which are behind and reaching forth into those things which are before I press towards the mark for the prize.
Exactly. It's about the direction, the consistent effort, not instant perfection. Progress, not perfection.
And speaking of help, there was that specific Neville Goddard insight about the state akin to sleep being best for changing the future.
Yes, he emphasized that state because effort is minimized. Your conscious mind is relaxed, less argumentative, so your imagination has more direct access to the subconscious powerhouse.
And the source mentioned eye-awake products, like Audio Serenity, as tools that might help people get into those alpha or theta states more easily.
Right, just pointing towards practical aids that some people find useful for getting into those receptive mind states where this imaginative work is supposedly most effective.
Okay, so let's try and boil this down for everyone listening. This whole deep dive into the law of assumption, pulling from Blake, Romans, those university studies, Goddard.
It really comes down to this. Your assumptions, especially the ones you feel are real, they aren't just thoughts. They are actively shaping your reality.
Which puts a huge amount of power right back into your own hands, doesn't it?
It really does. You shift from feeling like a victim of circumstance to recognizing yourself as the operant power in your own life. The key is becoming aware of your assumptions.
And consciously choosing the ones that serve you, the ones that align with who you want to be and what you want to experience.
Exactly. It's about deliberate, conscious assumption.
So maybe a final thought for you to chew on. Given how powerful your assumptions are, what's maybe just one assumption you're currently holding about yourself, about your life, about the world that you might want to consciously start reimagining right now?
That's a great question to sit with. What assumption could you choose to change today?
Yeah, just think about it. Maybe try one of the techniques we talked about. This is just scratching the surface, really. There's so much more to explore here.
Definitely. We encourage you to maybe revisit the source material, keep exploring how this feels and works for you.
Until our next deep dive, keep exploring, keep questioning, and maybe most importantly, keep assuming the best. For yourself and for everyone else too.